Welcome back to another web development video where I show you some of the ins and outs of front-end web development. In this video we're going to talk about creating a basic CSS spinner icon. Now these are what you see whenever data is loading into a web page. So the page loads, you get a spinner icon until the data fully loads in, and then the data replaces the icon. So I've been doing a lot of things with the APIs and pulling in information from outside third-party resources into the website. And so when you have that sort of thing, it's a great UI enhancement to be able to let the user know that there's something happening, especially for the first time that they visit the website and they get a blank page while the data is loading, or they get a blank section. Maybe they don't know if what they've done has actually triggered something, or there's been an error or something like that. So this allows them to know, okay, something is happening, I just need to wait. It's similar to what you get on whatever operating system you're on when, Windows used to have the hourglass that would go, and then they've switched to the circle. We're going to take the same thing. We're going to do kind of a really basic spinner circle. Is using CSS3, and we're going to use the animation property. So if you've never worked with the animation property, you're going to get kind of a crash course here. I'll put a link to a really good series of videos from the DevTips for Designers channel. And Travis Nielsen, a couple years ago, did a really great series on using animation, using keyframes, and then how that all works and what everything means. I'm going to assume that you know what to do, and if not, you should go check out that video series. That was one of the keys for me learning how to do CSS animation. So first thing that we need on our page is we need some sort of div. I'm just going to call it spinner. It could be a class, it could be an ID, doesn't really matter. But what you want is you want to be able to place this div wherever on the page you're loading something. So we're just doing super basic here. We're going to say body with a margin of 0 because Codepen, which is what we're using here, adds 1 pixel, or one like 1 em or 1 rem of padding just around everywhere, a margin to the body. And then this is going to help us because I want to center this. So if you've never used Flexbox, I have a series of videos on Flexbox showing how to do some basic alignment with Flexbox. But essentially we're just going to say display flex, and to center something you say justify content center, align items to the center, and then you need to give whatever container that you want to center things inside of, you have to give it a specified height. So we're just going to say 100 VH, which is 100 viewport height. So 100 units, it breaks down the viewport height into 100 units, or essentially 100%, but it's looking at the viewport height. Okay, so the body is going to extend. If it's a large screen, it's going to take that into consideration. If it's a mobile phone, it's going to take in to consideration how high is the viewport. Okay, so this should center everything inside of here. You don't have to give an explicit width, although you could. So let's get down to our spinner. And for the spinner, I'm just going to give it a background color for now so that you can see it. So we give it a background like super light gray, and then we're going to say give it an explicit width, let's say 50 pixels, and a height of 50 pixels. And so now you can see that our spinner is always going to be centered. So here it is. This is going to be our spinner. It doesn't look like much now, and what I want is a circle, kind of a circle that spins around like this clockwise. So to make a circle out of a box, out of a div that's a box, you just say border radius of 50%, and then that will make it, especially if these two values are equal, then it'll make it a perfect circle. So that's exactly what we want. And now I think we can take away our background, because that's not what we want. If you animate that circle, you're not going to see anything. What we want is kind of a broken circle with a line around it. So if we say border top, let's say 1 pixel solid black. Now you can see that we have something, right? We have a nice line. It fades out. It's 1 pixel here, and it kind of fades out as we go down. That's actually a really nice little effect, and it doesn't require you doing anything, honestly. If you wanted to do more, you could say border right 1 pixel solid black, and then you would get more of a circle. So see, there's only a little bit of broken line here. So you would get a more solid circle off to the right and the top, and then it kind of fades. So if you wanted something that was more complete like that, you could use that. I like just with the border on top, just because it's easy. It's one less declaration that you have to make and deal with. For this, you can use any color that you want. You can use red, pink, you can use orange. So all you have to do is change the color here, and then you can change this color. You can use RGBA if you're using SAS like I am. So you can give it an alpha transparency, or you can use hexadecimal or hue, saturation, illumination, and HSL values. So you can use any values here that you want to use. We're just going to stick with black for now. And then the last thing that we need is we need to use the animation property. Now this is kind of a shorthand for the full animation property. And what it takes is the name of the animation, which we're going to call it rotate, and the duration of the animation, which I'm going to set at 700 milliseconds. If you set this to something fast like 200 or 300, you might find that it spins a little too fast. So you just got to find a sweet spot of how quickly you want this to animate. And then the next one is what sort of motion do we want? So normally for an animation that you want to feel very lifelike, like someone is starting and stopping, you would use like ease in or ease out. But for this one, we want the same motion all the way around. We don't want it to be herky-jerky or starting slow or ending slowly. We want it to be the same speed all the way through. So we use one called linear, and that means that it's going to move the same speed throughout from 0% to 100%. And then last, we want to make it infinite. So there's a way to do a delay next. There's a way to do, which we don't want to delay. But we do want to determine how many times this animation runs. And if we do infinite, then that means it just continues to run and loop. Alright, so it's an infinite loop. Now, in order to make our animation run, we have to define what rotate is. We have to define the animation. We do that with an @ keyframes, and then we say rotate. So this name here needs to match this. Okay. And we want to start it at 0%, and we want it to do something to finish at 100%. And what we're going to use is the rotate property. So this is it's a transform property. It's a rotate value, I'm sorry. And so we say transform, and then we say rotate, and then it's almost like a method where we have to give it some sort of a value in here. And our value to begin is going to be 0 degrees. So we want to start at 0, and we want it to rotate to all the way around to 360 degrees. And when we add that in, because we're defining rotate and we have rotate already defined here, you see that we get the rotation. So that's super smooth. You can see here that if you do it at 300, it's going to go pretty fast. So if that's what you want, is something a little bit quicker, or if you wanted something a little slower, you could do 1,000 milliseconds, which is 1 second, but it feels a little slow to me. So I think anywhere between 600 to 800 is probably fine. 800 even feels a little bit slow to me. So 600 is a nice little pace. Now we can make some adjustments here to the border if you want it to look a little bit different. This one makes it look all whacked out, which is a little bit kind of trippy. But check this out. So if you do border all the way around of 10 pixels, solid black, and then you do a border top. See, right now it's all the same. It's rotating, but you can't see it because it's all the same color. But if we do this as red, now all of a sudden you have a little something going around. You see how the top edge has, if we stop this, you can see it. You can see that the top edge has a little bit of border there. If you do border top and border bottom, then you're going to get one down here too. So now you have a little bit of a different sort of situation. And then if you rotate that, you can see that it's a little bit different. So that's a nice little change up to the spinner. And you can get more fancy here with the opacities or that type of thing, where these two things are kind of bleeding into one another, or if you wanted to do even a border to the right of the same, then you can see you get a nice little spinner. It's kind of a reverse, right? Which that's not necessarily the best way to come about that, because all you would have to do is to just do this in red and then one border top in black, and you would get essentially the same thing. So play around with these values and just kind of see what's going to look good and what's not. But for right now, just having this one border top, not with 10 pixels, but with 1 pixel, is going to give you a nice little spinner action. So that is creating a super simple CSS spinner. And what you would do is when you make your call, your AJAX call, you would put the spinner right after you start that function. And then whenever the function completes, so you get your data back and you begin to output it to the page, then at that moment you hide the spinner and you show the data. Here's a good example here. And hopefully it'll show the spinner. The connection won't be so fast that you can't see the spinner. But you can see there. Do you just see how it came in? And so once it completed, once the data came in and replaced it, we replaced the spinner in the page. You see it again there. Okay, so it's the same exact spinner as this, just a different color. I was using blue instead of red. But that's how it would work. And you would be amazed at the difference that it makes whenever you have an application like this, where you're clicking something, waiting for something to happen, and there's just kind of a blank spot, and there's nothing there as the data is loading in. But just to have that one little opportunity to see it before the data loads in, because I'm on a really fast connection here, but let's say we did like a slow 3G and we do the same thing. Oh, well, now it's cached, but let's try to refresh it. Okay. So you see I'm on a slower network, and it's kind of taken, well, good for me. The design is pretty fast, even on a slow 3G network. So, but you can tell that it just makes a difference when you're loading in the data. If you're on a phone, this does load a little bit slower on a phone because you're pulling data into the website. You have to go to YouTube and go through their API. Hopefully this has been informative. If you have any sort of questions, please leave them in the comments section below. And if you thought this was great and it was something that can help others, please share it. I want you to be able to build quality applications and to use really solid UI elements like this, because it'll help the user more than anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.